Back to Simbright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this beautiful pattern shift gown. As you can see right there, it has two complete combination of plain fabric and Ankara fabric. So if this is what you want to learn in this class, I will encourage you to stay till the end of this tutorial to learn more. So you can see we have two side pockets for this dress. We have a zipper and a combination of plain fabric. I'm using 2.5 yards of Ankara fabric and 2.5 yards of my plain fabric. So the plain fabric is 2.5, Ankara is 2.5 yards. So I will set the plain fabric aside and I'm going to cut out half a yard from the Ankara for my sleeve. So now the open part of the Ankara part, I'm going to mark out my zipper allowance of 1 inch. That is the open part of the Ankara. So after marking it, I'm going to pick up the folded part and I'll place the folded part, which is the center front, very close to the zipper line. So after folding it in this way, the next thing we are going to do is to start taking the vertical measurements. So I'll create a border line first before I take my vertical measurements. So I'm going to place my tape on this line I made right now. So I'm going to take my chest line. My chest line is 9 inches. I will mark on it. The next is my waistline, 17 inches. I'm going to mark on it. The next is my hip line, 29 inches. I'll mark on it. And then I'm going to count 7 inches downwards. Okay, so you can count 7 inches downwards or 6 inches downwards, but for me I counted 7 inches below my hip line. So that will be where the Ankara will stop at the back. So now I'm going to highlight these lines so you'll be able to see them very clearly. So the upper line we have, this is the chest line, and this is the waistline, and this is the hip line, and that is the line at which we are going to join the plain fabric. So I'm going to take the width of my neckline at 3.5 inches. Okay, so if you're on a smaller size you can do 3 inches, but for me I did 3.5 inches width. Then the neck depth is 1 inch for the back. I'm going to connect the 3.5 or 3.5 to 1 inch. Then the neck depth is 3.5 for the front. So you can make 3 inches if you're on a smaller size, then connect to the 3.5 by 3.5 neckline. So now I'm going to take my shoulder. My shoulder divide by 2 is 7.5. Then I added half an inch for seam allowance, so I got 8 inches. So I took this measurement from the center front, which is the folded part. Then I'm going to mark the same 8 inches on the chest line. Then I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder drop, and I'm going to slant my shoulder at that point, then connect a straight line for my armhole. So I place my tape on the shoulder drop and get the midpoint of my armhole. I'll go in by 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch for the front armhole, connect with a straight line. Then I'm going to go in again by half an inch for the back armhole, connect with a straight line as well. So the next thing we are going to do is to take the measurement of our bust circumference, divide by 4. I have 10 inches. Then I'm going to add my ease and my seam allowance. All together is 2 inches. I added 2 inches. So now I'm going to connect the front armhole to the chest line and the back armhole to the chest line as well. So that is completed at that point. So next we are going over to the waistline. My waist divide by 4. I marked 9.5 inches. For the waistline I added 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches including my seam allowance and my ease for the waist. Then on the hip line I divided my hip by 4. I have 12 inches. Then I added 3 inches. So you can see how I'm adding them. 3 inches for the hip total for both seam allowance and ease. Then the down part where we are going to join, I use my hip divided by 4 and added 4 inches because it's going to be an A-line dress. So now I'm going to connect from the bust area to the waist to the hip, and then I'll connect with a straight rule to the next line. So I've connected from the hip to the last line. So now I'm going to extend all my line to the zipper allowance. So the waistline, I'm going to extend it because I want to contour my waistline. So I'm going to contour it to the hip line and to the neckline for the back to avoid zip bulge. So you can see how I'm placing my ruler, 1 inch to the neckline and 1 inch to the hip line. So all of these I'm going to cut them off. This is my contour line. I'm going to cut it off accordingly. So you can see we have to also add up what we are cutting off at the back. So I'll add back the 1 inch. Then I will take the measurement of what I cut off for the chest line. I have half an inch. I'll add it back. Then coming to the hip, nothing was taken, so I did not add anything. So I'll go ahead and connect from the chest line to the waistline and to nothing to the hip line. So I've replaced the zip contour line. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to cut out what I have for the back part. You know, we drafted both the back and the front right here. So but before that, I'll add half an inch on the shoulder for my seam allowance. So add half an inch for your seam allowance. So I'll connect that seam allowance to the neckline. So it's time for us to cut this dress. We are going to cut the lines that are outside, and those lines that are outside are the back line. So I'm cutting zipper contour line, then I'll go over and cut the length. Then I'm going to cut the line for the back, the armhole for the back, and the shoulder line and the neckline for the back. So this is what I got. I'm going to take off the back. Then after taking off the back, I'm going to now cut the lines for the front. So the first line I'm going to cut for the front right now, I'm going to cut out the neckline. So I'll just go down and cut out the neckline and then cut out the armhole line for the front. So after cutting out the armhole line for the front, then I'm going to cut the side of this dress where we replaced the back contour, zipper contour line. So this is what I got for the front line. So the next is to place my tape on the waist, which is 17 inches, and count down about 6 or 5 inches. That is my upper hip. My upper hip, I used 22 inches actually from my waist at 17. I'm going to open up the dress so we can slant this shape. So I'm going to come add half an inch. I added half an inch for seam allowance from the 22 inches, and you can see how I'm slanting it to cut it off. So after slanting it this way, the next thing we are going to do is to cut at that line we slanted. That is for the front. It's going to give you that shape you are seeing on the front dress. So the front is ready, well slanted. So next we are going to join the part of the plain. So I divided my 2.5 yards into 2 equal parts for front and for back. So what I have here is for back now. So I'm aligning it at the zipper allowance. I believe you understand what I meant. 2.5 inches, divide it into 2. Then one part of it, you fold it into 2 again because the back is in 2 pieces. So I'm taking the measurement from that 36 inches of the length we measured under the hip to the full length. I'm using 64 inches for my full length. Then I'm going to add on the hem part 7 inches to my hip divided by 4. My hip divided by 4 is 12. I added 7 inches. You can even add 8 inches or 9 inches because it's an A-line gown that needs to flow. So we are done with the back piece. So we are done with the back piece right now. So the next is the front piece. So I folded the remaining part of my 2.5 yards into 2 unfold, as you can see right there. and made a border line. So from this border line, I'm going to place my tape on 22 inches. For the front 22 inches, then measure your length as 64. So the front is higher because we slanted from the upper hip, which I used 22.5 inches for. So it's actually going to be long. Okay, so just go ahead and measure like that. You don't need to have a joining like I had right here, but because I made some mistake on my fabric, so I have to join that part. So now I'm going to open up and trace the border line to the end, as you can see right there. So after tracing it, I'm going to put it together. The upper part, I'll put it together like this. Then after putting it together and aligning it properly, I'm going to also put together the slanted front piece into 2 equal parts. So you can see how I'm putting it together. So I'm going to place the folded edge to the folded edge and then to the shorter slanted part, so I'll be able to mark where I'm going to join. So the rest of it, I'm going to cut it out. So I'll just make a notch at that point. So after that, I'm going to open up the plain part again, and I'm going to make a mark, a straight mark from the higher to the lower part of this. That is the 22 inches line I'm trying to create, because we are going to align it on the plain part too. So here is my plain part. I'm going to align the Ankara and the plain. You can see where I notched. That is where we are going to align. I believe you understand. So I'll just quickly secure the plain and the Ankara with my pins. So I'll just go ahead and pin on those lines. I made sure I matched the line I made on the Ankara and to the line I made on the plain fabric. I made sure I matched them accordingly so it aligns and is straight. So this is what I got after I'm done pinning. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to mark out that slanted part. Okay, so you have to use your chalk line, mark out the slanted part. It has to follow that trend because we are going to join it together. So that is why I have to mark it as slanted as that. Then next, from that point is an A line. So you just mark a straight A line like that towards the end of this. So after that, I will now cut what I have, adding 0.5 inch seam allowance. Don't forget to add your seam allowance for the stitching. So now I've cut out that part I also marked. So for this particular part, I've already measured the down piece of it, just as I did in the back part too. So the down part of the dress is the same measurement, which is my hip divide by 4 plus 7 inches. I measured it before I started to join the upper piece. So now the next we are going to do is to join the back piece. The plain part, we are going to join it to the Ankara part the same way. This is the back piece anyway, so we'll join this and join that together to form one full piece. So I'll go ahead and join them. So after joining it, I placed it on a lining. I want to cut a lining. The lining is not actually a full lining. I just made a half lining for this dress, but you can just go ahead and make your lining as long as you wish or whatever. You can even use a facing if you want, but I prefer to put lining to just give it that weighty look. So I'm trying to arrange it properly before I cut. So I'm cutting right now, just tracing out the shape of the armhole, tracing out the shapes of the sides like that till I get to the end of the lining. So I'm done cutting out the lining. The next I'll do is to prepare a lining for the back piece. So the front lining is ready. We'll move over to the lining for the back piece. so I cut it out as well, just following the same shape. So the next we are going to do now is to join the Ankara piece together. So we are joining it together because we want to sew our zipper. So your zipper can be longer than what I have right here. So I mark where my zipper stop, and I'm going to mark out my seam allowance at 1 inch on the zipper part. So I just go ahead and mark 1 inch, 1 inch till I get to the down piece of this dress. So I will take it to the machine now, and I'll follow the stitches and stitch and give it a good press. So you can see what I have after I'm done sewing the zipper. Next is to also place the lining. I also stitched the lining, but I did not add zipper on the lining. So I'll sew the neckline together. Of course, you know how to go about all of this part. So I'm done sewing the neckline. Next is to cut out the excess zipper and then place a notch on the neckline. So after placing the neckline notch, I'm going to top stitch on the part of the lining. So I'll flip all the seams on the part of the lining and I'll top stitch. So here, this is what I got right now. So next is to flip it right side to right side. Follow the stitches, secure with your pin first, and follow the stitches you had already on the zipper on the Ankara part, and then you stitch on the line. You follow the stitches of the line and stitch on the lines accordingly. So after stitching, I'm going to turn my zipper right now to the front piece. So you can see how the technique I'm using to turn it, so I'll have a straight zipper edge. So this is what I got. I'll turn the other part as well. So once I'm done turning it, I'll go over to the ironing table and I'm going to give it a good press. So here you can see what I got. Everything is lying nice and flat. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to open up the front piece so I can sew the neckline as well. So I place the neckline right side to right side, and I'm going to also secure with my pins accordingly. So I secure with my pins to make sure the lining and the fabric are not shifting in any way. So once I'm done securing with my pins, I'll go over to the machine and stitch at 1/2 inch. So I've stitched. So this is what I got after stitching. So I've already top stitched and gave it a good press. So now I'll place the right side of the back and front, the shoulder seam lines. I'm going to fold it the way you are seeing me fold right now. Then I'll go over to the machine and stitch the shoulder seam line at 1/2 inch. So the shoulders are ready. The next we want to do now is to sew them on the sides like that. So make sure you match the parts that we have the Ankara and the lining. Secure them with your pins accordingly. So I'm making sure that I secure them with my pins. So after sewing them, the size will match up, and I'll do the same for the line. But I have to first cut out my pocket. So you come up by 1 inch on that line I made and mark 7 inches. Then you place your hands like that. This is how I like to cut my pocket. So you can cut your pocket the way you know how. So I'll just go ahead and cut out this shape, and it becomes the pocket shape. So after cutting out this shape as my pocket, I'll go right ahead and attach it on the side of the fabric only. So you are going to attach on the side of the fabric only. So you can see I've attached and I have closed up the sides at 1 inch, but I have to come down to the waistline 2 inches before I added my pocket. Please take note of that. I measured my waistline 2 inches downwards. Then you have to make notches on the pocket side so that the pocket will be free. Okay, it will be free and out of the seam lines. So this is what I got right now. So next is to give the sides a good press. I've done that, and here I'm trying to turn it to the right side so we can work on the sleeves. So this is what I got at the end of the day. So we are going to attach our sleeve. So I'm attaching this sleeve using a basic sleeve. So but I added 3 inches on the size of my basic sleeve. On the size I added 3 inches, and the length is 16 inches for my basic sleeve. So I added 3 inches on the size, but the length of this Ankara part is 16 inches. So you can also make it 17 inches if you want. So I've already made notches on the sleeve head and on the front sleeve accordingly. So you can see what I have is almost 19 inches on the full width, and I also cut my fabric on fold. On fold I have 6.5 inches, and the length is the length of the down part of it. So you can see I'm going to stitch right now at 1/2 inch. So after stitching, this is what I got. So I measured 8.5 inches. That is the width on fold of the down part of this sleeve. 8.5 inches, because it's actually a bogus sleeve. So from that 8.5, I now marked 1 inch. Remember, I added 3 inches more, because on the armhole we also added ease, if you remember, when we were drafting it. So my sleeves are ready right now. The next is to join the sleeve to the bodies. So now I'm going to put the lining and the fabric together, and I'm going to insert my sleeve and sew round the sleeve. So you can see we have gradually come to the end of this tutorial. So if you have watched up to this extent and you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? So you can see this dress is very beautiful. So please kindly subscribe to Simbright YouTube channel. Turn on your notification bell to receive videos like this every day. Like this video, share to family and friends. Drop your comment on the comment section and your suggestions as well. So you can see the pockets on the sides. The dress is actually looking beautiful. Thank you once again, and see you in the next class. Bye.